from the next one, the Stephen Chong.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fu. I apologize getting late connected. And thank you for Professor Zhang Jianchao's wonderful presentation. And the next one is Stephen Quong, right? Stephen Quong for Geopathic Stress and Your Health, an Introduction to Tao Geomancy. Okay, the topic. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, I'm here. Can you give me permission to share my screen? I actually have a PowerPoint presentation, which I made 1 hour ago, 4 slides. So I'll finish on time instead of playing a pre-recording of my presentation.
Good, good. Go ahead.
So do I have the screen?
Yeah, you have.
Okay, let me
screen.
share this and let's see what happens. Okay,
yeah.
We have a screen here. Very good. So let me just make a few remarks here. Tao Geomancy is somewhat related to Feng Shui, but it's not really Feng Shui. Feng Shui deals with the movement of Qi, Yin Yang, 5 elements, Bakua, all these classical things, landscape formations. And Geomancy deals primarily with earth energies and the spirit world and the world of subtle energies. So this is an area where many Feng Shui masters don't really do much work. So this is one of my areas of great interest and one of my specializations. And my topic is geopathic stress in your health. Here we have some contact information for my website, my email, and my office telephone. And I'll show this later at the end of my presentation as well. And in fact, my presentation will be available as a stream from my website after we finish the conference. So you don't have to take notes, you can just listen again and you can follow along here. So let me show a slide here, a diagram of the subtle energy field of the Earth, which can include many things, underground water, earthquake stress lines, ley lines, all kinds of things. And I'm going to read to you from a short article which I published on my website, which will be a good, concise summary of this field of the geopathic stress. Widespread international research now indicates that geopathic stress may be one of the primary causes of degenerative illnesses and chronic health conditions. These studies show a high level of correlation between major illnesses and sleeping or working over an area of geopathic stress. So this relates not only to the COVID-19 pandemic, but to all chronic and degenerative diseases. Geopathic stress can be caused by many different factors, including the electromagnetic grid of the Earth, because our Earth is magnetic, earthquake fault lines, tunnels, caves, construction sites, sewage pipes, underground streams, mineral deposits, noxious gases like radon, radioactive rocks, geomagnetic and geological anomalies like gravitational differences with different types of layers of Earth. Then we have burial sites, the trauma and instability resulting from millions of years of Earth changes, cosmobiological influences, which are astrological, and all of the other traumas inflicted upon nature by humans, their machines, and toxic waste. In one recent study done by the Dulwich Health Society from the US, they studied over 25,000 people, and they discovered a direct connection between geopathic stress and 100% of the people who get secondary forms of cancer. 95% of people who get cancer were sleeping or working in an area of geopathic stress. 95% of children who are hyperactive and who have learning disabilities or who are difficult to control are on top of or sleeping on top of stress zones. 95% of people who get AIDS. 80% of parents or caregivers who abuse their children. 80% of divorces involve one or more partners experiencing geopathic stress. 80% of couples who cannot conceive children naturally, 80% of women who have a miscarriage, just a few more, 80% of babies who die in the crib, 70% of post-viral fatigue sufferers, and 70% of people who have food allergies. So, common symptoms of geopathic stress can include fatigue, weak immune system, depression, nervousness, loss of appetite, poor digestion, allergies, insomnia, circulation problems, muscle cramps, and grinding of teeth. And children are especially sensitive to geopathic stress. Bedwetting and continuous crying by babies may occur. Now, of course, there are many other causes for these symptoms. It could be nutritional, lack of exercise, social issues, and things like that. But there has been discovered a strong correlation between these symptoms and geopathic stress. Now, fortunately, there are many ways in which we can identify and neutralize many forms of geopathic stress. Electronic instruments can be used to measure electromagnetic fields, microwave radiation, poisonous gases, and radioactivity. And for things which cannot be measured with instruments, we can learn to use dowsing instruments and develop our intuition and become clairvoyant and use these techniques to identify the more subtle energy fields. Now, after we identify the cause and the location of these forms of geopathic stress, what can we do? There are many possible remedies for each one of these. Just as acupuncture has proven to be an invaluable technique to regulate imbalances in the energy meridians of the human body, likewise, earth acupuncture, called geopuncture, and other specialized tools and techniques can also be used to provide us with relief from geopathic stress. So there are different techniques and different tools for different types of things. So for example, instead of using small needles on the meridians, we can use copper tubes and a hammer and locate the meridians and the ley lines on the earth and find the exact point where the insertion of this tube and the sending of energy through our intention can actually move a meridian, unblock a meridian, or send more energy through a meridian and to transform the subtle energy field of the earth. So just like certain meridians affect certain organs of the body, certain parts of the body, certain meridians in the earth can affect the local and even more distant areas of a property. After the completion of an earth acupuncture or land cleansing project, there is usually a feeling of lightness, elation, calmness, greater alertness, higher vitality, and a greater sense of peace and harmony with the environment. Living and working in an environment free from geopathic stress will increase the life force, or qi, of the occupants, which in turn can result in enhanced creativity and better personal performance. Now, I have listed here a number of common types of geopathic stress, underground streams, and this is very common. Even if you live on a hillside or a desert, there might be underground streams several hundred meters deep. And when two streams cross at different levels, they create a vortex of energy, which is spinning counterclockwise. This can rise hundreds of feet into the air above ground and have a very adverse effect upon a person's health, their mental concentration, and just their overall well-being. So there are things which you can do, and I'll discuss them right now. I have another slide with some common remedies, but I'll discuss this right now. If you suspect that you're sleeping on top of an underground stream or a stream crossing, one of the simplest and most effective remedies is to place a full-length mirror under your bed with the mirror side facing down. Now, there should be nothing else underneath your bed. No clothing, no shoes, no books, no storage, just a mirror. And the mirror should cover the entire area under which your body lies, but especially your torso and the upper part of the body where the chakras are. And you'll find that if you place a regular mirror, or if you can't find a mirror and you want something faster and cheaper, mirror foil, mylar foil, which is mirrorized, which you can buy on Amazon.com or online, and placing that underneath your bed, your sleeping area, can make a huge difference. So I've spoken with so many people without even a consultation or a proper diagnosis of the problem, just placed mirrors face down underneath their bed, and they were able to sleep much better right away. Now, black streams are underground streams which have dried up and have rotting vegetation, animal parts. The fact is, where human habitation is, people have lived for thousands and perhaps millions of years. So, with earthquakes and earth changes and mudslides, many of the ancient streams were covered up with debris, and we don't know where they are. But the stream bed might have old vegetation, dead animals, all kinds of things which never decomposed properly, but became half decomposed, and they release noxious gases, which can come from several hundred meters down to the surface. And even if there is no apparent odor, you have this sense of being sick, of being poisoned, of being weak. And this is much more difficult to remedy than just underground streams. So some kind of earth acupuncture, which requires some training, or some kind of other technique where we send positive energy, positive chi into the earth. Now, when you're working with people, whether they're present or distant, you're sending energy to just affect the human body. When we send chi into the earth, we have to send chi perhaps several hundred meters into the earth, and perhaps a radius of several hundred meters as well. Well, most realistically, maybe 50 to 100 meters underneath the house. So it takes a lot more energy, a lot more mental focus and concentration, and a lot more assistance. So the work we do, which is heavy duty and difficult, is typically done with the assistance of our spiritual teachers, our spiritual guides, grandmasters of our lineage, and the elemental beings, angelic beings who work with trees and mountains and forests and things like that. So communication with nature spirits, with spiritual beings and spiritual guides is necessary, because as a human being, it's very difficult, unless you're a great Qigong master, to really have enough energy to gather and concentrate and direct energy in a way which can transform the subtle energy fields of an entire property. And sometimes the properties are very large, like several hectares or several acres. It require some time to send enough energy and do enough work to make a permanent and lasting change. Then there are things like burial sites, ritual grounds, where people came together for meetings and rituals and prayers and religious services. And these will have their records. And there are places where people were killed in wars, in battles, through starvation and things like that. So wherever there are human memories, the Akashic records or the ethers will store these records for a long, long time. And the more trauma there was, the more negative emotions there was, the longer the records will last. They could last for hundreds of thousands of years. So, for example, I visited India, and I visited the place called Sarnath in North India, where the Buddha gave his first sermon, Deer Park in Sarnath. And even though that was over 2,500 years ago, the spiritual energy there is so strong, so powerful, so peaceful, so elevating. You feel as if he were still alive and giving, it just left and was still present with his disciples giving a lecture on the Buddha Dharma. So likewise, places which have experienced trauma, and especially emotional trauma, and many people experiencing trauma in the same place, are very, very difficult to transform, and the assistance of spiritual beings and special techniques and a higher level of spiritual protection is required so that the ghosts and the spirits, the wandering spirits, won't bother you. The electromagnetic grid lines are everywhere on the Earth. They exist because of our Earth being magnetic with the North and South pole and natural grid lines through certain latitudes. But because of power transformers and high voltage power lines crisscrossing urban areas, there are additional power grid lines which go from south to north and from west to east in the diagonal directions. They're perhaps every 10 or 12 feet apart, and where these lines intersect, there's a vortex of energy spinning counterclockwise. And if you're sitting or sleeping on top of this vortex, you'll feel sick, you'll feel tired, you'll be restless, and over the long term, you might get one of these chronic conditions, which I listed in my earlier slides. So these grid lines are much easier to deal with. There are certain things you can buy, but what you can do if you can learn dowsing to identify the exact location, or just using your hands to feel energy, so you can be quite accurate and certain about what you feel, you can find the grid lines and you can get a 10-inch nail, a galvanized spike, and put it perpendicular to the ley line, where the ley line is entering the house or the property. And for some reason, the ley line will be diverted and go over the house or under the house, and there will be no trace of ley lines of this electromagnetic nature in the house. And if you block them from all directions, there's going to be no crossing point of ley lines, and therefore there'll be a much more peaceful environment because of the lack of interference with these EMF patterns. There are also earthquake fault lines. Besides the big ones, like the San Andreas Fault and the Hayward Fault in California, there are minor lines just about everywhere. And some lines are stable and some lines are shifting, and some lines are put into motion because of earthquakes hundreds of miles away. So if you're sleeping on top of a fault line, even if it's very deep underneath the ground, the differential in the height and in the direction of these plates can cause some kind of energetic stress, which is detectable and which can make you feel weak, uneasy, out of sorts, unbalanced. So finding these fault lines is also important, and these can occur naturally or because of construction. When people dig underground and create basements for skyscrapers, very often they are disrupting minor fault lines, and certainly they are disrupting ley lines, which are called like dragon lines in feng shui. The natural flow of energy underground following the terrain is interrupted by construction. And if there are no rituals and ceremonies to ask for harmony and forgiveness and permission to dig deep into the ground, there can be disturbance of the spiritual world as well as disturbance of the physical fault lines underneath the ground. Then there are things like geomagnetic anomalies where there's different intensities of gravity because of different density of different rocks and formations. If your house is built on top of a cave, you'll have this sense of dizziness, not being grounded, and things of that nature. So there are many, many different types of geopathic stress, and when we do a feng shui and Tao Geomancy consultation, very often we have to go through a checklist of 300 things to look for, not just a few. But this is just an introduction to the topic and a listing of categories. Then after we clear the left-turning, counterclockwise, debilitating energies, we can activate power spots. Now, there are natural power spots which occur in nature, and there are power spots which we can actually create with our intention and with the direction of qi and the creation of a thought form which is anchored and permanent. So we can, near the center of the house, create or reinforce the heart point, energies of the heart, for love, for family, for growth, for happiness. The lung point of a house is usually located near the front entrance, and we want a good qi to flow into the house from the front door and the windows and from various other openings. And if we have a strong heart point anchored into the ground, that lung point will attract and store energies for circulation of qi, greater awareness, greater alertness, and basically better health. There are points also for healing, for prosperity, for creativity, for yin yang, and for whatever you want. There are many, many possibilities for these things. Now, let me come back. I'm not quite finished yet. That was my last slide, but I want to talk also about other things before we finish. And if there are questions from the people that can access me through chat, you can ask questions on behalf of other people or any questions which arise. There's the element of wandering ghosts, imprisoned elementals, curses, and spirit possessions, which are not really geopathic stress, but they are very much often located close to areas of geopathic stress. You might notice that cats like to be on certain places where they're cozy, and dogs will like to sleep on certain places with a different kind of energy. So cats typically prefer to sleep on top of a negative vortex with energy spinning counterclockwise, and dogs and other animals will prefer to sleep or lie on a place where there's clockwise spinning ascending energy for their needs. So dealing with the spirit world is part of geomancy because they're around. Wherever we go, there are hundreds of spirits in a house or in a room. They can leave, most of the time they leave you alone, but if you have some connection, or if they're mischievous, they can cause problems for you. And then there's also the energy of the people who lived in the building or house before you. People have lived there for a long time. I'm sure they've had times when they were arguing or angry or yelling at each other, and those energetic records are stored, but especially in hardwood, in door frames, by windows, by the kitchen sink, where people stand and talk a lot. And there are also ley lines within houses created by people. So when you enter a house, besides the usual housewarming, house blessing, house purification, deeper levels of cleansing and purification and activation are necessary. So the usual things, burning incense, playing music, chanting mantras, ringing crystal bowls, ringing Tibetan bells, these work to a certain extent, but they don't really affect the energy of the land beneath the surface. Perhaps the typical rituals and remedies will penetrate maybe just 2 meters deep. And so you can have all these ceremonies, you can have all these prayers, you can have chanting, you have meditation. Then after a few days, when people leave, the energy returns to the same, because the focal point of the energies was beneath the earth, and the good energies that were generated in the space by people were not directed deep into the earth to transform the anchor points and to release these thought forms and these energy fields and to replace them with something else. Giving you my contact information one more time as I finish up in the next few minutes. I have 2 websites. Golden Dragon Feng Shui is for Feng Shui and Geomancy, and my other website is for astrology, geotisha.com. That's my other work. I practice Vedic astrology from India, which is quite different from the Chinese system, but I found it to be very accurate and very useful for diagnosis of health conditions, for predictions for the future, and for understanding our life path and our divine plan. And when things open up, I'll be offering weekend workshops on Feng Shui and Tao Geomancy, and even offering a 7-day certification course for people that are interested in doing this at a professional level. In the meantime, I'll be offering webinars on this topic from time to time. And the last slide is of me standing at a power spot in Eastern Europe, the country of Bosnia, which is the site of a very ancient valley. It's now called the Valley of the Pyramids, and there are actually 5 pyramids there. The biggest one, called the Pyramid of the Sun, is about 30,000 years old, according to archaeologists and geologists. It's even older than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, and there are really strange energies and phenomena arising from this pyramid, a beam of light going straight up from the apex. And if you go underground in these really ancient tunnels, there's some very unusual energies there, which are great for healing and for meditation. So there are power spots around the world which we can visit. Because of travel restrictions, we can learn to create our own power spots in our backyard, in our house, in our prayer room, in our meditation room, and take advantage of this knowledge to make life in the modern times as good as it can be. So working with earth energies is a vast topic and an area of specialization within certain schools of Feng Shui, but not all modern Feng Shui schools address this. The school where I studied is called the QIMAG, International Institute of Feng Shui and Geobiology. The founder and grandmaster is Dr. Jess Lim, who's from East Malaysia. He's recently retired there in the city of Kota Kinabalu, and he's still teaching some advanced courses once in a while. But he's my mentor and the founder of this school, and has helped me in many ways to develop spiritually as well as practicing Feng Shui and Tao Geomancy. So I think it's good for us to utilize and combine technology of the West, this skill which is called dowsing or radiesthesia, and use instruments to be able to locate subtle energy fields and to measure their intensity, and to use things like quartz crystal pyramids and copper rings and other things invented by esoteric inventors to change the energy fields of the earth. And these same tools can be also used for healing the human body. So it's just an extension. The earth is where we live. We're interacting with it all the time. We cannot believe that we are living separately from the energies of the earth. And if we can harmonize and activate and elevate the quality of energy, our health will be much better. So in combination with taking care of our body through exercise, through sleep, through good food, living a natural lifestyle, being more aware of earth energies can be a big asset and a great assistance to our personal growth and our health. So that is the end of my presentation. I finished on time with a couple minutes to spare. So if anybody has any questions,
录网不好啊。
I will stop that and come back and look at the chat box, or the moderator can also ask questions for anybody else.
Thank you very much.
Yes, this is rather unusual. Nobody else is teaching this. Not many people even know about it. So it's like that aspect of feng shui which deals with the invisible world of subtle energies, which is what we're dealing with. Qi is not visible. It's more than just energy. It's more than just oxygen or prana. It really is something much more profound, and there's many different qualities to this Qi. So thank you very much. I am finished. Thank you, Dr. Effie Chow, for inviting me. Thank you for Dr. Jack Wu and all the moderators and volunteers who have made this marathon Congress possible. I think you have to be a Qigong master to stay up and listen to 40 hours of talks, but it's worthwhile. I hope it's been recorded, and more people will come and watch and listen and learn about these valuable sciences.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quong. This is a wonderful, interesting topic, interesting presentation. And the next one.